Welcome to the Consciousness Anywhere and Everywhere podcast. I am Shannon O'Hara, and I invite you to a completely new world of possibilities. If you have been present and current with this podcast over the last few months, you will know that I have been releasing a lot of podcasts about money. Number one, because it's one of my favorite topics, but also an area where I know there is a tremendous need for more ease. So I am compiling my 5 top money habits for you guys. Now, I looked at this and really wanted to give you guys like valuable content. And it's tricky with when you're talking about money because there's so many people out in the world that tell you just do this or just do this and then you'll get it right and then this should work. And there is not one size fits all reality and way for money for everybody. There just isn't. We're all so different. We all have different points of view. And it is so true that our sort of deepest, most core, and oftentimes subconscious or unconscious sort of energies and points of view, belief systems around money is what dictates how we allow money to show up in our lives, how we allow anything to show up in our life. And so I fundamentally believe that number one, you have got to really be honest with yourself about what's going on in your world around money. Because if you're not, then no matter how good the money tip is, it's never going to work for you. Because if you, like, for example, fundamentally like are really resentful towards money or hate money or money is this source of like stress, or let's say that there was a lot of like upset in the family or the household that you grew up in and your parents were like constantly fighting about money, that tends to create a place where you then as an adult think that money is a source of conflict. And why would you want to have conflict in your life? So to get rid of the conflict, you get rid of the money and then wonder why you have no money in your life. So really at the core is your deepest points of view about money, which have to be questioned and brought to light. And you have to be really honest with yourself and then look at what other choices are available for you. So just like anything in our lives, being more conscious, honest, clear, aware can make huge changes. And getting to what's true for you, you might have to really like destroy and uncreate a lot of, let's face it, crap that you bought that might not be serving you anymore. So I needed to make that sort of disclaimer before I get into my top 5 money tips. Because again, no matter how good the tip with money is, if you're lying to yourself or hate money or don't really, you're not being honest with yourself about stuff, then it just won't work. Or you might have temporary success, but not long-term progress. So that being said, the bar is set very high. What would you like your financial reality to be? You know, it's like, what is truly possible for you? Okay. So financial habits, money tips. So also too, the thing about habits, I think it's like a real buzzword right now. Everyone's like making like a big deal out of habits, which I read that book, Atomic Habits. And it was interesting because like I really got everything I got from the book was like in the first like 4 pages. It was like the rest of the book was sort of like not all that relevant for me. But he made an indication about that if you, for example, change your trajectory right now, you might make this minuscule alteration of your direction, but you'll wind up down the road hundreds of thousands of miles away from where you would have wound up if you hadn't made an alteration today in a choice and what he calls habits. And I think habits are a little bit like tricky because I think it makes it sound like this automatic thing that you can do that you're just automatically this is your habit, and therefore then that's the answer to fixing your problems, which I think we need to be very careful of, because in truth, habits are choices. So it's really about the choice you make today. Um, and it is truly the choice we make today that compounds into the future that we create or we destroy. So starting from where you are, what choice can you make that might not even really seem like that big of a deal right now? And that's the really cool thing about money, and something I've noticed because I've had the time span to watch how this stuff works, that you can really compound stuff with money. Was it Albert Einstein said that compound interest was like one of the eighth wonders of the world. And this is not about compound interest, and this is not like about financial apparatus or concepts. This is actually about knowing that your choice creates, and what can you choose with money today, essentially, that will invest in and contribute to your future with money. Habit number 1, you have to stop saying that you can't afford stuff. Every time you say, I can't afford that, or that's too much money, or every time you even think like I can't afford that, or that's too much money, you're making that so and true. And there's this incredible thing that occurs that when we tell ourselves something enough, we start believing it. And if you can replace that statement or that conclusion with a question, what would it take to afford this? Do I actually desire this enough to afford this? That has to be the first thing that you change. You have to change the habit of I can't afford this, or that's too much money, or that's too expensive, to a question. What would it take to afford this? Do I truly desire this? Because one of the things that's true is that people get what they choose. So you have to really look at, do you desire to choose this? And if there wasn't a limit, would you want this? Is this truly what you'd like to choose? And if so, what would it take to afford it? Because then as soon as you start asking, well, what would it take to afford this really interesting thing starts occurring where the universe starts magnetizing towards that question to show you all of the ways in which it is financially possible. And I know that might sound like, I don't know what that sounds like, but I feel like it's such a easy solution that I see so few people choose. It must be harder than I realize, because it's so popular to say you can't afford rather than to ask how you can. And so the people who you see, or if I don't even know if you see them, but the people out there in the world that are having financial freedom, making big financial choices, having freedom with money, are not sitting there thinking they can't afford things. They are always in the question of, what's it going to take to afford this? Where is the money for this? How do I create this? Always. Rich people are in the question. Poor people are in the conclusion that they can't afford. And literally, rich people just make themselves rich by asking, where's the money for this? And then they go do it. They go find it. They go choose it. They go create it. They go have it. They have a different point of view. And it's that question and that different point of view that creates. So, and the really like super achievable thing with this is to notice when you're like, I can't afford this, or that's too much money. And then don't do that. Replace that with a question. For example, just a little example from my life. I made a administrative error transferring what I would call a huge sum of money. And the place where I sent it had to send it back because I didn't put the payee's name, the receiver's name. So the bank didn't accept it. So they bounced it back to my bank. But I had converted the money before I sent it. And I can't hold that currency in the bank that I sent it from. So the bank was like, we're going to have to change that money back. And this is during the time. So like whenever you're listening to this, the US dollar is like bottoming out right now. And I had changed USD to euros like 2 months ago. And then by the time all the red tape and the administrative stuff got done with the bank, the US dollar had just like completely crapped out. So I was like, wait a minute, I need now to buy back all those euros with my extremely weak USD. And the bank's like, yep. And I'd like tried everything I could. I was talking to everybody I could. I was asking so many questions. It just came down to this. And I was like, wow, I'm going to lose thousands of dollars, like probably around $15,000 to $20,000 doing this or more. And I was like, I was upset, but I had to look at that upset was based on that a point of view that there was a lack, that I would lose this money and that would somehow be an issue. And I looked at that and I was like, okay, well, what's going to make this easy for me? Well, stopping having the point of view that there's a lack and that this $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 mistake on my part is going to like make or break my life, because newsflash, it like won't at all. And it's gotten to this place where I was like, I refuse to feed energy to the point of view that I lack or that there is a lack in this equation. And that choice to always turn towards infinite possibility, even like when logic tells me that there isn't infinite possibility, or when I'm buying into everybody else's point of view about money and right ways to do money and wrong ways to do money. And if you lose this amount of money, then that's a problem. Like everybody's got a point of view. Like everybody's got not just one point of view about money, like about a trillion points of view about money. And the weird thing is everyone thinks that they're right about their points of view about money. It's so weird. It's like, and they're all different points of view. So this leads me on to money habit number 2, which I think is sort of like the bigger ask here, which is to always be honest with yourself about your reality with money. It's one thing to say that, it is a whole other thing to function from that. And what I mean by that is, it's like how many points of view, ideas, energies, attitudes, logic have you taken on and bought from other people about money? I mean, primarily your parents. You know, it's like, look at what you bought about money from your folks. And it's something that if you continue to function as though that their point of view was right or real or appropriate or the best way to function, that's something that might stick and limit you. It's like, I grew up in a household, I had a biological father and a stepfather, and the stepfather is the one that raised me. And I had my birth mother, and there was all sorts of different financial points of view from all of them. I mean, it's actually my stepfather who's the one who ultimately taught me about money, like much later on in life. But when he was married to my mom, they were in tremendous financial strain and stress, like the entirety of their marriage. I would say my mom's like a chronic like shopaholic. So she would be like basically getting rid of all the money. And he is also a chronic shopper and likes to spend money, but he now makes money. So anyways, I grew up, the moral of the story is everybody had like their way of being with money. And I, as a early 20-year-old had no money and hated money. And I finally got to the awareness that I hated the way that money made people behave in the household that I was growing up in. And then I took it a step farther and realized that it wasn't money that was creating that. It was them that was creating that. And it was really money as a sort of like the innocent bystander that's sort of getting roped in and blamed for everything. And it was my stepfather who asked me many years later, he's like, if you had your reality with money, like what would it be? And I realized I had no clue. I knew what my mom's point of view with money is, and I knew what my dad's reality with money is, and I knew what my stepdad's reality with money was, and I knew what everybody else's point of view was. I was like, whoa, I don't know. And so I kept on the question of like, okay, so what's my reality with money? Like, what is my reality with money? What does that even mean? What's my reality with money? And I kept asking it, and I kept asking, and I kept asking. And one morning, so I asked it for 3 weeks. And then one morning I woke up and there was the first element of my reality with money, and it was joy. And I was like, oh my God, totally. Like, I actually really have so much joy with money. I like have joy having money, spending money, being around money, talking about money, thinking about money. It's like really joyful for me. And I realized that if I was not being joyful with money, I wasn't being me. I was functioning from somebody else's point of view and somebody else's reality with money. So that was like the first foothold or building block or stronghold that I chose that assisted me to essentially like cultivate, build my reality with money. And it has never failed me. I have achieved financially in ways that almost nobody in my family, besides my stepfather, has. No one ever taught me how to do this. I'm just working it out as I go. Because I'm like, okay, so if I was truly being me with money, what would I choose? And it's so easy to reference like everyone else's points of view with money. Like, well, what should I do, or what's the right way to do this? No one can tell you. And the thing is, if not trying to apply somebody else's financial reality to you might not work for you. And that's why it's so important for you to know what your reality with money is. And I know that that might require you to be honest with yourself in ways that are confronting or necessitate changing big parts of your life. So I essentially get that maybe this podcast, this conversation is for people who are willing to do what it takes to have money.
Money, money, money. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you know what it is? Jumpstart your receiving and money ease at shannon-o'hara.com/money, where you will find classes, exercises, books that I have personally used to make myself a happy millionaire. What's it going to take for money to come to you with ease and joy and glory?
So, habit number 2, you gotta function from your reality with money, and you gotta find what that is. So for me, like, I know that my financial reality is joy. So when I'm not in joy, I know that's not me. And so when I made this administrative error with with my big sum of money, that I was like, okay, if I'm being depressed, upset, stressed out, like critical about this, that is, I know that's not me. Like, I'm happy with money. So I'm just going to keep being happy. And I've watched how being happy and being joyful, like prioritizing happiness and joy with money, I've like watched how that's worked. I mean, it's never steered me wrong. So what is your reality with money? Function from it as a habit rather than functioning from everyone else's reality with money. Habit number 3. This is much more of a doing one, which is putting away 10%. Now, 10%, so tithing is the Hebrew word for tenth. And within the Jewish community, obviously, tithing is something that's really popular and known about. It is practice to tithe 10%, to tithe to the needy or to charity or to the church or whatever. And there is a book called The Richest Man in Babylon where he talks a lot about this 10% thing. And it's my stepdad who really turned me on to it. And at first I didn't really get it. Like he was more just like, look, if you want to change your financial reality, do this. And I had to take it on faith because I didn't get how it would work. So essentially he said, put away 10% of everything that you earn, like religiously, put it away and never spend it. Now that was the part that was hard for me. And that's the part that's hard for most people to get about never spending it. And if you need to spend that 10%, it means that you don't like having money. You like using money. And there's a really big difference between having money and using money, or like getting it just to be able to use it. People who have money have money. It's like there in their lives. They're not constantly getting rid of it or finding other ways to spend it. And I realized that I really struggled having that 10% sitting there because I constantly wanted to do something with it. And then I finally learned that the 10% was actually just to like keep me company. It was like this money companion that was just there to be with me. And so I started to let it be there, and I spent my 10% twice. I built it up and spent it twice. And what occurred every time I spent the 10% was I would be in worse financial shape than I was before I spent the 10% each time. And it was like so obvious and so noticeable. So I was like, no, never again. I'm not doing that again. And so I started building up my 10%. And then this thing occurs, which is, I think, actually the true magic of the 10%. And there is, each and every one of us has this magic number, and it's different for each and every one of us. But when we reach that amount of money in our lives, all of a sudden, like all of our strain and stress and attention comes off of money, and it starts magnetizing more money to it. It's this phenomenon, and you only know it if you've like experienced it, but you have to be willing to have that amount of money that is your magic number and like never spend it. So like, and obviously, like I said, with Judaism, like they tithe it and they give it to charity or the church. I'm not suggesting that. What I'm actually suggesting is that it's an honoring account for you. Like you put it away for you. So that 10% is there to just sort of like keep you company. Now I have converted a large amount of my 10% to gold recently, because obviously the US dollar, like I said earlier, is having an issue. So I was like, okay, holding all this cash is like, so I put it into gold. So that's my 10% in gold, and it's still there. It just sits there. And a lot of people are like, oh, you should use that money and blah, blah, blah. And I've listened to other people and used the 10% to like invest or buy jewelry or do something. And it like totally didn't work for me. It created such a wobble in my finances. So I have just found what works for me. And again, because we're all different, you have to find what works for you. And putting away that 10% is this magical phenomenon where when you reach that critical mass, that magic number for you, it takes away all the stress and strain off money, and it starts magnetizing money to it. And I literally, that large amount of money that I transferred and then got sent back to my bank account, that was partly my 10%. And what happened with that was the money was sort of sitting out in digital ethers between, it wasn't anywhere. It hadn't been accepted back into the original account that I got sent from, and it wasn't in the account that I sent it to. And I literally had to call my bank in Singapore, and they had to go find the money. It was like such a trip. And so that money was like missing for nearly 2 months. And in that 2 months, I felt so poor. It was this incredible, and I knew it was because there was this gaping hole where my 10% should be. And as soon as that money made it back into the account and I put it into gold, it was like, all my stress about spending money completely went away. It's just such an interesting phenomenon. So you got to do your 10%. You can put it in a bank account. You can buy gold. It could be cash in an envelope under the mattress. It could be how it works for you, but you have to, it's never about, I'm doing this to save this money up so I can spend it. It's, I'm doing this because I choose to have money as a companion in my life. And this money will always be there for me, not because I'll need it, but because it's a good friend. So that's the 10%. Financial habit or money tip number 3. Number 4, take inventory of your finances. I think this is like going to be like the most unpopular one, meaning essentially pay attention to money. Some people love paying attention to their money, and some people absolutely hate it. I would say I understand both directions very, very well. And it's amazing how many people don't really pay attention to what's going on with their finances. And that's something that I know leads to many more problems than are necessary. So it's sort of like taking inventory of things. I don't think I'm going to say much more about that because that's really a choice somebody has to make. And there's like a lot of ways to do that, but essentially, like, are you paying attention? You know, are you paying attention to what you earn? Are you paying attention to what you spend? Are you paying attention? Because when you know what you're earning and what you're spending, I'm actually not a believer of budgeting for less. I think that's actually horrible. I always budget to create more. That's always it's never the, oh, I have to spend less and find out where I need to stop spending. It's always, okay, so how do I make more money? Is basically my point of view. So, and that's that thing about going back to sort of financial habit or tip number 1 about the I can't afford it. It's the complete opposite of that. It's the, okay, I'd like to afford this. So what's it going to take for me to make more money? And that's always worked for me, creating for more. I hate having to choose less. I do not like to budget. It does not work for me. And anybody that says you need a budget, like that, maybe that works for them, but like that is just like not my cup of tea. It does not work for me. And I have tons of money. So you can not budget and still be very aware of your finances and have a lot of money. So you have to find kind of like what works for you, but not paying attention, like not being aware of what's in the account, what's in the credit card, how much you owe, how much you earn, what's coming up. Like that doesn't work. That just will never work out. It's sort of like being in a relationship and like never looking at the faults of your partner or never being honest with yourself about what you're doing that's not working in the relationship. It's sort of like eventually that relationship is doomed. And if you guys don't break up, you're not going to have a good time. So it's the same thing of like, you've got to pay attention to what's going on with money, not to make yourself crazy and not to feel buried underneath like financial stress, but to bring awareness to it. And then with that awareness, what will you choose? With that awareness, what can you choose? Information is good. Unconsciousness, bad. Information, good. And then my last financial habit and money tip, I feel like is maybe not for everybody. So all the other ones I've already said will work for everybody. I guarantee it. But this last one, I'm not sure that this is everybody's cup of tea. It just really works for me, which is setting financial targets. Now, one of my really good friends, Dane here, who has been on this podcast, he's a financial juggernaut of his own. He is incredible with money generation, and I've talked to him about this, and he says setting financial targets is like kryptonite for him. It is so not his cup of tea, and so he doesn't do it. But he still generates like dynamically. So again, like financial targets like really doesn't work for everybody, and I really am not stating this so that you try to make this fit for you, because if it doesn't work for you, like don't do it. But if it does work for you, check it out. So one of the things I do is I've always, not always, my dad taught me to ask for the money that I wanted, meaning like ask the universe and ask people too. There's this phenomenon where it is such this incredible thing where you ask for money. Like if you ask enough people, like eventually someone will give you money. Like, and I don't just mean people, like everything. Like even if you went out right now on the street and just started asking people for money, like yes, some people would reject you and say no, but some people would give you money. It's incredible. So when you ask for money, like you can get money. And so what I started looking at once I took inventory of my finances, I was like, okay, this is the amount of money I need to ask for to cover all my expenses and then also have like fun money and do my 10%. And I got what that total was for me. Like I needed this much for this much for this much for this. And it was like way more. It was so outside my comfort zone at that point in my life. But I asked, even though I was like, this is a lot, this feels hard, this is difficult, but I'm going to ask. And I asked, I think I started asking, and like 3 months later, I reached that financial target. And I was like, whoa, like, and I knew I reached it because I was paying attention to money. And I was like, oh, okay. I had totally not expected that I would be able to reach that at that time, it was $10,000. To me, $10,000 a month was like way out of my comfort zone. But I did it, and I did it in 3 months, and I was like, weird. Okay. So then I just kept asking, and it kept coming every month. And there were some months when it didn't, but over time, progressively, I was hitting it more oftentimes than not. And I was like, whoa, there's something to this. So then I increased my ask. And then I increased my ask. One of the amazing things that Stephen Bowman, who is in one of the money interviews, one of the things I got from him at one point, he said, always ask for what's slightly outside of your comfort zone. Like if you're comfortable with what you're asking for, you're not asking for enough. And I was like, but I took his advice. Quietly, I went away and I used it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to ask for beyond my comfort zone. And I just kept working and kept working and kept working. And like years later, the income that comes in every month, I'm like, holy shit. Like this is like nowhere on God's great earth did I ever dream, about, I'd say 10 years ago is when I really started buckling down and committing to changing my money reality. Nowhere in 10 years ago would I ever have dreamed that I would be reaching these financial targets, which has just gone to show me that I can just keep asking for more and setting different financial targets and achieving them. So find out like if that works for you. Like look at your money, get clear on what's going on with money for you. And then meaning like when I say get clear on what's going on, like you need to know how much you actually require monthly to like run your life. All of the base necessities, rent, food, insurance, whatever, gas, all that, whatever your life is. And then add 10% on top of that for you. And then add 10% on top of that for fun. And then maybe even add another 10% just to push you out of your comfort zone. And that's the amount you need to be asking for per month. Now, if you're looking to create or achieve something big, right, that's different. So if you're looking to do a big project or to buy a house or to finance a school or whatever, right, that's a different ask. But you need to ask. And yes, you might ask a bank or you might ask your parents or you might ask someone directly, but you need to ask of yourself. Okay, what's it going to take for me to generate and create this amount of money? What's it going to take for this to come into existence? And then ask the universe, please, you show me how to do this. And then you got to follow the energy, which I find most people suck at. They want to come to conclusion so quickly about money. And having more money, having more ease with money, expanding your financial powers is like really requires you to be more. And in addition to being more, you have to receive more. And I watch people just really shit the bed with that one. So this asking for money, like, isn't just about paying your bills. Well, I guess it like could be, but that is not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about asking for money and a great life. Why do you want to have money? If it's to fulfill your needs, get you out of pain or pay your bills, I hear you. What if you can do all that and have fun and expand your universe and have money as this joyful companion rather than a villain? 5 financial habits that if you apply them might just work. Good luck. I would love to hear from any of you guys that have applied or learned from any of the money interviews or from this habits podcast. It's so interesting throwing this information out into the world, never knowing who's going to hear it, never knowing what's really relevant for you guys to hear. And I know that this is also like a really like the content here is self-demanding. It's not entertaining. It's like self-confronting for sure, which seems to be my style. So good luck, have fun, and what would it take for all of money to come to you with ease and joy and glory?
Thank you for listening to this show. My target is to make consciousness easy to find and choose. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes and share this with somebody who you know who might be looking for more consciousness in their life. You can visit me on shannon-o'hara.com or talktotheentities.com. And to learn more about the amazing tools of Access Consciousness, you can visit accessconsciousness.com and be sure to subscribe to the podcast.